TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Zora Suleiman. Texas officials have admitted mistakes were made after facing criticism over their actions and version of Tuesday's deadly school shooting, which left 21 people dead.
For the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision, period. There's no excuse for that. But again, I wasn't there, but I'm just telling you, from what we know, we believe there should have been an entry at that as soon as you can. Hey, when there's an active shooter, the rules change.
Well, police have now confirmed reports the gunman roamed outside for 12 minutes before entering unchallenged, contradicting earlier claims that he was confronted and shot at by an officer. Another senior MP has called on Boris Johnson to go following the release of the Sue Gray report. Veteran Tory MP Sir Bob Neill issued a statement saying the report's findings had undermined public trust in politics and a change of leadership was needed. It comes just hours after the MP for Eastleigh, Paul Holmes, quit his role as a Home Office aide. Well, meanwhile, the Prime Minister is insisting that the new energy support package will help the country get through bumpy times. Every UK household will get a £400 grant towards energy costs, but Boris Johnson says the public will still feel the pressure until prices start to fall.
Look, I'm not going to pretend that this is going to fix everything for everybody immediately, and there are still going to be pressures, but it's a very, very substantial commitment by the government to getting us through what will be, I'm afraid, still a bumpy time with the increase in energy prices around the world.
5 members of a modern slavery gang have been jailed for trafficking and exploiting hundreds of women across London. The group, which included a husband and wife team, were jailed at Isleworth Crown Court for offences over a 6-year period between January 2015 and February last year. And closing arguments are underway in Johnny Depp's libel case against his ex-wife Amber Heard. Heard's lawyer Ben Rottenborn has suggested to the court that the actress could not leave the relationship, while Depp's lawyer Camille Vasquez told the jury to give the actor his life back. Well, those are the latest news headlines. Still to come, your TalkSport update, but first, your weather.
Times Travel sponsors Talk TV Weather.
Hello, I'm Nazneen Gaffer. We've had 2 zones of weather for today. Across the south, zone number 1, we have seen mostly fine and settled conditions, all thanks to high pressure that's been slowly building and pushing its way northwards from the southwest. But zone number 2, the north, has been somewhat cloudier, anywhere from northern parts of England, Northern Ireland, northwards, up towards Scotland. It's been cloudier, cooler as well, because we've got blustery conditions and there's been some hefty showers about, particularly across northern parts of Scotland. Although, so far, we are seeing most of them fade away into tonight, so it is actually going to be mostly fine and settled through the night. In fact, high pressure continues to build and move its way further northwards, so winds will become lighter through the night. It will be mostly dry and clear. An isolated air frost possible across parts of the north, and some showers will continue across the northeast, where it will turn a bit blustery. Then for the weekend, Saturday looks like the driest, brightest, calmest day overall. A fine start for many areas and continuing fine and dry into the afternoon as well. Some good spells of sunshine, warm mist across parts of the south, particularly down towards the southeast. Across parts of the north and east, it will be blustery and a bit cooler, but it will be mostly fine. Then Sunday turns generally cloudier. There will be showers at first across the north and east, where it will be blustery, and I think later on there'll be more homegrown showers further west in the day as well.
Times Travel sponsors Talk TV Weather.
Hello again. Well, Liverpool fans have descended on Paris as they face off against Real Madrid tomorrow for the Champions League final. Our correspondent Oliver Whitfield-Miocic sent us this update.
Excitement certainly building here in Paris as Liverpool and Real Madrid prepare to face off in the Stade de France. If the Reds can pull it off, this will be their 7th Champions League title. Meanwhile, it would be the 14th for Los Blancos. Both sides are quietly confident that they can clinch it, but there is a mutual respect for the threat that they both face to each other.
Antonio Conte will be Tottenham's manager next season. There had been doubt over the Italian staying despite Spurs qualifying for the Champions League. However, after a meeting today with the club's managing director of football, Conte has agreed to stay for the upcoming season. In F1, Ferrari's Charles Leclerc topped both practice sessions in Monaco, setting up the prospect of a win at his home race. The second session was stopped as McLaren's Daniel Ricciardo crashed into the barriers, while seven-time champion Lewis Hamilton struggled for pace, only managing to finish 12th. Well, that's all for now. I'll be back with more in half an hour.
I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and this is the home of Straight Talking. What really makes me angry is injustice, when people don't get their fair shot at life, and some people get more than others just because they are there.
Good evening, it is 6:05 and you are listening to me live from the Talk Radio studios. This is Talk TV. Now we go over to Prof JC, Professor John Christopher Buer, a White House correspondent at Real Political News, and our eyes and ears over the pond. At a tragic time, the appalling shooting at the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. My commiserations and condolences to every American, but especially those affected in the community there, Prof JC. It's difficult to know where to begin. I suspect, but perhaps with the latest news that Texas authorities say that it was the wrong decision to wait for a tactical team before confronting the gunman at the elementary school. You would have just heard that. Perhaps if we start there, what's your reaction to that latest news?
Well, that obviously the governor wasn't clued into what they were saying because he said something completely different yesterday. And I suggest that next time they want to go in front of the media, they should bring the Lone Ranger with them if they can exhume him from the old 50s TV show, because they were pathetic and they can't cover. And Rob, you know, always in politics, the fish rots at the head. And the governor now is blaming mental illness. And it wasn't the guns that did it. It was a mental health issue. Well, if that's the case, Governor, why did you cut $210 million from your health program in Texas? And basically, the only place you get mental health in Texas is in the prisons.
Prof JC, it's a very difficult thing. If there were ever to describe and to explain to a British person and vice versa, if ever there were kind of a real political and cultural and consequent sort of philosophical difference between many Americans and British people and, other parts of the Anglophone world, New Zealand, Australia, for instance, especially New Zealand. It's your Second Amendment. Now, I know, of course, that it was a tight-rung thing whether or not the Second Amendment does guarantee an individual as opposed to a militia the right to bear arms. But nevertheless, the Supreme Court have made it clear that it is an individual right, and consequently the government can't take individual guns as a matter of law. But this widespread endemic gun ownership is pretty much unique in the Anglophone world. And what we saw in the UK after a mass shooting was broad political consensus across the board. I mean, it was many years ago in Dunblane. You'll be aware there was a terrible school shooting there. They pretty much took away all the handguns. Right. You'll know about the massacre in New Zealand. The same thing. Help us understand more why it is that that it's so difficult for people to persuade their fellow citizens to pass law, if it's at all possible in the US.
Well, first of all, former Chief Justice Berger, I know you know about the Supreme Court,
right,
said this interpretation of the Second Amendment was the greatest fraud perpetrated on the American people. This amendment is it's about state militia. It's not about individuals who can grab a gun. Now, the main culprit, and with all politics, as we talked last week, Rob, all politics is related to money, is the National Rifle Association, which has the gall of claiming that they are a 501c4. In other words, a social welfare organization, and they are tax exempt on top of it. And they are donating millions and millions of dollars to politicians. And that's who they are beholden to. And the politicians are beholden to NRA. And today, at this very moment, we have Donald Trump And the governor's not showing up in Houston because he's afraid he'll be mauled. But we have Donald Trump and we have Ted Cruz, who took $167,000 from the NRA, speaking, and it's a big bloody fundraiser.
Right, and just to be clear to all listeners, what you're saying is the NRA, the National Rifle Association, who, you know, I follow them. I watch what they do. I mean, they give various senators and members of Congress ratings according to how likely they are to defend the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms for individuals. What's difficult to understand is in the wake of yet another school shooting, why there isn't a sort of overwhelming majority of opinion across the political spectrum to do something about it. Your answer is purely money. But I wonder, do you think that it might be possible in Washington to, for the federal government to pass legislation at least banning some of the weaponry that was used to slaughter these children?
Well, it is if the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate voted for it, because you have a filibuster issue, and you have to get 60 senators to vote for something like this, and that's not going to happen because the senators that are taking the dough are Mitt Romney and Richard Burr, and I can down a list of them. It's almost as good as the list of Adrian Messenger, if you know the movie, and they are a phenomenal group. They are beholden to the NRA, and the NRA supports gun manufacturers. Who do you think makes these Remington and Winchester, etc.? They make they make the bullets and the magazines and the guns and the scopes, and they are in bed with the NRA. They support them, and it's a consensual, incestual relationship.
Well, what do you have to say? And it's important to put the as far as there is an alternative side of the case, there is certainly an argument to be made that, you know, there are lots of firearms available to people in Canada, right? There's endemic firearm ownership in that, you know, to your more peaceful northern neighbor. You can get firearms in this country, but of course there are preconditions to have them. The question is, I mean, it's right to say, is it not, that it's not the weapons that kill people, it's people who kill people. And this does indicate a lack of investment in, first of all, making sure that there are, preconditions to owning a firearm, but also that there hasn't been any investment in treating people with serious mental health issues. Do you think that's right and reasonable? And would that have stopped this horror? Well,
of course. I mean, an 18-year-old boy on his birthday went and bought a notorious piece of arms that the troops in Ukraine would love to have in their defense. And this is going on.
Can I just stop you? Because I want our listeners to understand this, right? I think this is the most powerful part of it, right? An 18-year-old kid, clearly damaged, right? You know, clearly of concern, wakes up one morning, he can go and just help us in the simplest terms understand what he bought, basically the type of place he would have bought it from and what he did, Prof. JC.
Well, he went to a gun shop, and you can go to gun. They have exchange parties. They have gun retail. They have gun wholesale. You can basically go into your local store and buy an arm like this, which is only to be used in real life by the military. And you're certainly not going to shoot up a deer. And in Canada and in sane countries, if you have a gun, you belong to a gun club. You keep your gun there, right. and you know, Trudeau is on talking about the tragedy. I give him credit. If you look at the conditions that the Canadians have to go through, the situation to get a gun. I mean, we can get a gun easier than we get a fishing license. You can kill a human easier than you can catch a trout.
Well, just to give your our listeners a difference, of course, they'll understand it. You know, possession of a firearm in this country without a license, you get a mandatory 5 years. In prison. That's for a basic handgun. The type of weapon that he held yesterday, we're talking about a minimum period of 10 years in prison. You know, we don't pass lengthy serious sentences, but that is how detersive the sentencing is for offences of that kind. But the background checks and, of course, the place that you have to keep a gun in secure, in safety behind lock and key, are strictly governed. But there's a difference of emphasis because part of the philosophy of owning a gun in America and the Second Amendment is the idea that individuals should be able to defend themselves in the event that the state becomes tyrannical. And there's no arguing with that. So consequently, even with the dead bodies of children, there isn't going to be a solution in, anytime soon, right?
Well, I think, unlike yourself, who's read court hearings and has read the outcomes of decisions by the Supreme Court, the average American person, certainly not the MAGA people, have any clue what's going on there. And Justice Berger said it right. It's a fraud. It's a fraud used in the terms of the Second Amendment. Now, of course, we had to defend ourselves, but these were state militias that were given the right to have guns. Not any Tom, Dick, and Harry, not some 18-year-old boy who shot his grandmother in the face and then said, I'm going to go shoot some kids at the local school. And he went and killed 19 children.
Mm-hmm. The difficulty is until there is an overturning of the case, which, of course, was, I think, brought against Washington, D.C., and it was a 5-4 decision. Unless that's overturned by the Supreme Court, any law that's passed restricting firearms is effectively unlawful. So this isn't just a statewide legislation problem, it's a Supreme Court problem as well, is it not, Prof. JC?
Well, we are in an election year, Rob. You know that. And everything is measured upon that. And if the Republicans don't act, it's very, very conservative and toe the line of the MAGA people like Trump, they may not win. And I'll tell you something. We've spoken about this a lot. Last week and the week before, we talked about Roe v. Wade and that issue. Yeah. And that's getting a lot of Democrats and like-minded Republicans and people who are open to get out to vote, and this will get people to get out to vote because the scenarios are just tragic.
Well, let's see. I have to say, my condolences to every American. The death of anybody is a tragedy. The deaths of children in these circumstances where there cannot be any political change is a tragedy for a great nation, for a community, for all of the parents, for the loss of their future. I watched that, as so many of us did, with not just sympathy, but with tears and solidarity to your community. Thank you so much, Prof. JC. As ever, you're listening to me, Rob Rinder, live from the Talk Radio studio. This is Talk TV.